After what happened a couple of days ago between the whole Nelson Peltz and Bob Iger situation, it's pretty much over at this point when it comes to the Walt Disney Company and all of its surrounding divisions such as Lucasfilm, Marvel Studios, Walt Disney Animation Studios, Pixar, etc., and everything related to their live-action remakes when it comes to animated classics are also at stake. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future updates. You can also follow me at Mike01. I thank you also very much for the great and kind support. So one thing about the Walt Disney Company right now is that Bob Iger is continuously lying about following an agenda and shoehorning DEI and woke nonsense into everything related to Marvel, Star Wars, doesn't matter, anything that Disney owns, any kind of property that they actually have in their grasp is going to be, of course, inserted with DEI elements. And that's something, by the way, that we've been talking about when it comes to Deadpool 3, of how Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman and Sean Levy and the writers of the film are trying to prevent from happening for the third act of that movie. Now, focusing on the whole Jenna Ortega situation, aside from what happened with the Pirates of the Caribbean reboot trilogy plans, as we discussed a couple of days ago, if you missed out on it, check out all of that. But what's interesting about this, moving forward, has a lot to do with how Jenna Ortega recently took serious action against those like Bob Iger, and the rest over, of course, at Disney, such as all of the board of directors, the executives, etc. Now, on top of all of this, with that being, of course, said, with the Walt Disney Company and all of its divisions showing no signs of improvement for 2025, given that Marvel is going through expensive failures as it is, one major development now has to do with Bob Iger's stance on his usage of DEI into many upcoming projects. However, one serious update now has to do with actress Jenna Ortega shortly after her withdrawal from appearing in the Pirates of the Caribbean reboot that cost Disney a major setback. Just recently, Disney held an emergency meeting after they reportedly lost Jenna Ortega on two valuable properties and projects. One of the big ones was going to be Pirates, and a new animated Disney movie that was planned to be just as big as Frozen. However, something far worse came Disney's way shortly after that movement by Ortega and her team, such as her agent and manager, who also felt this was a necessary business move. Ortega recently also dropped out of a mega Disney live-action remake from one of the animated classics that was going to put Ortega at the forefront within the cast. It turns out that Ortega was already chosen for a major role in the upcoming Sword in the Stone remake that Ortega recently learned was going to double down on the usage of DEI, and something that Bob Iger approved after revisions were made to the script. It turns out that this development occurred after her fallout with the planned Pirates of the Caribbean reboot trilogy. However, it's unclear who Ortega was going to portray in Sword in the Stone. Another reason why she dropped out was that Bob Iger was chasing concepts of gender swapping in the film, and that the character Ortega was chosen for is something that she had creative differences about, and decided to back out of this project almost immediately. Disney has been in the process of trying to get Ortega on numerous projects, just because she is one of the it girls in Hollywood, much like Sydney Sweeney is as well, and views Ortega as highly profitable, especially after her completion with Beetlejuice 2 arriving this fall, with, of course, her withdrawal from Sword in the Stone reportedly put a serious halt to the production of the film, and announcements already have come to a complete halt as well, as Bob Iger was preparing to announce the entire cast, a new release date, and even the direction of the plot by this June. In addition to this, Bob Iger and even the creators attached to the live-action remake of Sword in the Stone, that Ortega bailed out of, by the way, that held multiple agendas and the usage of DEI, is that it was going to break away from source material, much like Snow White 2025 is planned out to as well. This is said to be Disney's strategy to create original stories based on Disney classics. Right now, Ortega's withdrawal is leading Disney to discuss on whether or not they should even move ahead with this film at all, now that Ortega is out of the film and rapidly leaving Disney altogether. Ortega reportedly gave them a heads up, even before leaving, the project, that if their push for DEI was not dropped, she would be leaving the project altogether, and it turns out it all led to that point in the long run. Now guys, let me just stop here before I move on. Now, this is, I think, the one reason why a lot of people are rooting for people like Ryan Reynolds and Jenna Ortega in this situation in isolation, and we've seen similar patterns happen with Henry Cavill, not with Disney, but with other studios, and Gina Carano is another one that really stands up for fans directly and stands up for the general audience and who's going to go ahead and watch these films and these TV shows, whatever have you, right? So they're the type of Hollywood actors and actresses that really think about the people and not just about business per se all the time. And I think that's one thing to really acknowledge at this point, and it's the one thing that's beginning to really frighten Disney. And look, this is all Disney's fault, this is all Bob Iger's fault. It was all they're doing, they're asking for it, especially after what happened with Nelson Peltz. Terrible, movement on that part, by the way. I think that Nelson Peltz will be back in 2025, there's no doubt about that, if things do not change, as he recently warned. Now, again, this tug-of-war situation, alright, over at Disney between Ortega and her team also had to do with financial differences. Now, get this, as Disney wanted to pay Ortega far less than any other studios that are currently and have been paying her for projects like Scream, Wednesday, and even Beetlejuice. Bob Iger is already frantic behind the scenes about other Disney live-action remakes after delaying Moana as well. So I don't know if you guys knew this, but the live-action remake of Moana was really delayed and put to a halt for now, and I can only imagine why, right? I think it's pretty obvious at this point of what's going on over at Disney. They really are trying to right-size their budgeting, their casting decisions, and everything related to their marketing strategies with all of these projects. Whether it's live action and animated, it doesn't really matter at this point. They really want to spend less and make less to kind of build up this pattern, as Bob Iger announced weeks ago, over the next 2 to 3 years to see what works and what doesn't work, and then they can rearrange those patterns when the time comes, essentially. So again, Jenna Ortega putting a stake in Disney's progress with not just Pirates of the Caribbean, with not just the animated department, but also now with the Disney live-action remakes. And in this particular case, Sword in the Stone. Doesn't sound like it's going to happen, at least in the foreseeable future. I don't think it's coming out next year. It's most definitely not coming out in 2026. At the earliest, even if it arrives, we'll see this thing in 2027, if there's even going to be a Disney at that point in time, as you see it right now. If you think it's bad now, it's only going to get worse next year. That's just a given fact. But overall, I would love to hear what you all have to say about the ongoing scenarios happening between Bob Iger and all the different angles at the Walt Disney Company. And if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel, and I will catch you guys later.